And now we're doing tape number 15, video number 15, and this is about freedom of the press. So, just as you have the power under the First Amendment freedom of speech to hold and express your thoughts in speech, you also have the power to hold your thoughts and write them down, get them out in freedom of the press. Okay? So, that's all really important. And the limits that applied before under freedom of speech, you can apply again under freedom of the press. So corporations have the right to advertise in a written form. Politicians have the right to advertise in a written form, but you can't threaten people. Okay, you can't engage in terroristic threats, clear and present danger. That's not acceptable. Now, also, I need to add one other thing. And as I try to open my pen again, we're talking freedom of the press. Also want to add into this as a limit, and this is national security. Do you have the right to take national security secrets and publish them? And the answer is no, you don't. There's an exception carved into our freedoms that a country has the right to protect its interests, to protect its secrets. And so what we are allowed to do is the government is allowed to protect certain national security secrets. So you hear about people, the most recent is a woman, I think she's 28 years old, reality winner. And she is accused of taking secrets from the government. She was a contractor and she took them to a publication that published them online. She was convicted of violating national security acts, taking American freedoms and American secrets and getting them published. And she thought we needed to know. Well, the government disagreed and she was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Okay, so we have national security secrets that are not covered under freedom of the press. Okay, and also you can't stop something from being published until it's published, unless it involves national security. Okay, so let's say you're an entertainer and somebody's coming out with a negative story about you. It's going to be published in some magazine. Well, what can you do about it? Not much. If it's published in the United States, there's not much you can do about it. They have the right to publish. You can go after them afterwards if what they published was untrue. But if it was true, you can't do much at all. Okay? It might make you look bad. That's okay. Now that leads then to two problems with freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And these problems are, number one, lying. Is lying protected speech? Is lying protected speech? By the way, if you lie and you write it, it's slander. If you say it, if you write it, it's libel. And if you say it, it is slander. Okay? Okay? Are they protected? And the answer is no. Okay? So, if a lie is told about you, you can go after the person who said the lie. You can take them to court. It's not a crime, but you can take them to court. Okay? And there's a difference. There is the public, it's called the public private test. And simply what's going to happen is they're going to ask, are you a public person or are you a private person? Okay, public people, politicians, movie stars, actors, actresses, athletes, people in certain positions. You know, the president of the university is a public person. Okay, private people are basically ordinary citizens. Okay, many of you are private people. If you work at a grocery store, you're a private person. You're a doctor, a nurse. Generally, you're a private person. Okay? So if you're a public person, you have to do one thing. If you're a private person, something else. So let's say you're a private person, somebody writes a lie about you. Okay, what can you do? You go to court and you say, this is a lie. So all you have to do is demonstrate the falseness of what they wrote. Okay, supposing somebody wrote something that says that you're pregnant and you're not. Very simple. You take them to court and you say, I'm going to prove I'm not pregnant. Get the doctor out there, do a pregnancy test. You're not pregnant. You're not pregnant. Okay? What they published was untrue. Okay? If you're a public person, you have to, number one, demonstrate the falseness of it. And number two, you have to demonstrate what is called malice. Malice. Malice means they really, the person who told the lie, really hate you. They want to take you down. Okay, so you have to demonstrate not only that something's false, but number two, that they wanted to hurt you. This is very difficult to prove. Donald Trump complains about this. He doesn't like this whole public private thing. Listen to him sometime when he talks about libel laws. Okay, he is really frustrated. He thinks people are lying about him, but he can't go to court and prove the lie and prove the malice. And so, as a consequence, he is very, very troubled by that. Okay, so that's the first problem with freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Second problem is obscenity, pornography. Okay, is that constitutional or not? Is it protected? Lying is not. Turns out obscenity is not either. But there's a problem. What is obscene? What is obscene? Okay, what is obscene? And at one point, one justice of the Supreme Court actually wrote about it, and he came up with what I think is the best definition, but it's not very helpful. And it's, I know it when I see it. I know it when I see it. And you go, okay, that's very good. Not sure quite what that means, but we'll go with that, okay? So, what's obscene? What is obscene? Okay, the Supreme Court has actually struggled with this question a lot, and they're not been very successful at really defining it. I'm trying to turn my page to the next page. It used to be, forgive me for telling you this, but back in the days when the Supreme Court was all male, at one point, a movie would be shown someplace, and if the local police would arrest the theater owner, and it would go to court, and they'd say it's obscene. Eventually, it would make its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would then have to decide, is this obscene or not? And the only way to tell us, under the I know it when I see it, is to watch the movie. And so apparently, one thing that supposedly took place, according to a book that was written in the 1970s, is that the members of the court, most of them, would get together on Wednesday afternoons, go to the basement of the Supreme Court, and show porno movies. And they would have popcorn, have some beer, and they would vote yes or no as to whether it's obscene or not. That's a pretty embarrassing thing when that came out. Nothing like the Supreme Court watching porno movies that the rest of us could get in trouble for watching at that time. So the Supreme Court backed away from that, and they finally came up with a test. I think this test is a helpful way to look at obscenity, and it's called the Community Standards Test. And the community standards test, see, there it is right there. The community standards test very simply works like this. Let's say you go to a movie, go to a theater, see a movie, and it's at the theater, and you are just offended by it. You look at that movie and you go, that is so disgusting. Okay, so what do? You go to the police. Police officer then goes to the movie theater and watches the movie. And the police officer then makes a determination whether that in fact offended the community standards of the town where the movie was shown. If it does, that police officer can arrest the manager of that theater, the projectionist at that theater if they want to, and then they would bring them into court. They would have a trial, and local community people would then make the decision, is this a violation of our standards or not? Okay, now to do that, to say it's a violation of the standards, Supreme Court says has to be offensive. Right on the face of it, you look, oh, that's offensive. Number two, it has to be aimed at people's, Supreme Court uses a special word, prurient, 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 which means sexual interests. And it has to be without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific values. Okay? So they got to look at that movie. The jury has to look at the movie and see, was it offensive? Did it appeal to our lustful interests? And was it without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value? And of course, the simple answer to that is the very fact that it's a movie in a theater, came from a distributor, would imply that it has serious artistic value, and so therefore it's okay. It has to meet all three of those criteria: the patently offensive, the prurient interest, and has to be lacking in artistic, scientific, political value. Okay, and that's a hard thing to do. So as a consequence, there's very few convictions nowadays for anything involving pornography in the United States. It's really hard to do it because you could have, if you look at it, you could have something that's offensive in Abilene, but not offensive in Austin. How does that work? How does a movie director, how does a movie distribution company know about that? How does a rock group go about doing a show in one place and then they do a different one in another on the basis of people's attitudes? That's really hard to do. So it raises the question, what is always pornography? What is always offensive? And the answer is very simple: child pornography. Child pornography is always offensive. It's always illegal. Okay? Child pornography is always illegal. It's a violation of First Amendment. It is not protected in any sort of way. Okay? So we leave it at that. And that's enough information. So remember, freedom of the press, the same limits as speech, and don't forget national security, you add to that as well. And then the problems with freedom of the press and freedom of speech are, of course, lying, and lying is not protected, and obscenity is not protected. But it turns out that obscenity really means child pornography, and child pornography is not protected speech. All right, that's why you can be arrested for possessing, sharing images of pornographic nature involving anybody under the age of 18. Okay, we'll stop right there. When we come back, there's still more on the First Amendment.